Frames allow you to divide a web page into separate regions that can display content independently. The content in these frames is described by individual HTML documents. Updating the content in one frame does not necessarily change the content of any other frame. Therefore, you may create elements in one HTML document that are consistently and constantly displayed throughout a site. Frames are normally displayed with borders and scroll bars. They can be resized by the user by dragging the frame border. However, you can eliminate the borders or scroll bars and prevent users from resizing the frames. Therefore, you can achieve significant control over the layout and presentation. Finally, pages with frames can easily be authored with alternate content for browsers that do not support frames. A page with frames is created by first declaring a frame set with the frame set tag. The frame set encloses the declaration of the individual frames with the frame tag. The structure is similar to that of the list or table tags. Here is an example. Note that the frame set tag is not part of the body tag. It is an HTML tag element, just as the head and body tags. In this example, there will be two frames displayed as rows. This means both frames will extend across the entire browser window. The height of each frame is set with the rows attribute. The first frame, which will appear at the top of the browser window, will occupy 50% of the window. The second frame will use whatever space remains in the browser window. The frames are declared with the frame tag. The top frame will contain the pic1.html document, while the bottom frame will show the pic2.html document. Each frame can be assigned a name with the name attribute, and these frames have been locked with the no resize attribute. The following figure displays the final result. The charts showed list these attributes and associated values. There are 4 options for specifying the size of frames in conjunction with the rows or columns attributes. Percentage of screen height rows equal to 20%, asterisk. Number of pixels. To make the first row 200 pixels tall, use rows equal to 200, asterisk. Use asterisk meaning whatever is left over as shown in the example above. Use n asterisk where n is a number. This means n pads of what's left over. Thus, rows equal asterisk, 2 asterisk makes 2 rows where the first one is 1/3 the height of the screen. The second is 2/3 the height of the screen. Rows equal to 100, 2 asterisk, asterisk creates 3 rows. One 100 pixels tall, one that takes up 2/3 of the remaining space, and one that takes up the last 1/3. There are additional attributes of the frame tag. You may have noticed that there are attributes shared by the frame set and frame tags. Attributes declared in the frame tag have precedence over attributes in the frame set tag. In the following exercises, you will create a simple frame set page, one that is divided up into either rows or columns, but not both. A good example of this would be a home page that has a toolbar that takes you to different portions of a website. Once you've learned how to create simple frame set pages, it's actually quite straightforward to create a complex frame set page, one that can have both columns and rows. The most important thing to remember about frames is that a frame set page requires more than one HTML page. If you have a page with 2 frames in it, 3 HTML files are needed, 2 to provide the content for each of the frames, and one that describes how the frame set will be laid out. The borders between frames can be controlled. It has been possible to adjust the size of the frame borders even to the point of making them disappear. The 3.x versions of Netscape and Internet Explorer have made it possible to set the color. Internet Explorer handles this by having the background show through using the frame spacing attribute, so it is actually not a frame border feature. This is done with the frame border, and frame spacing attributes. The value of frame border is yes by default, so most of the control comes from the value of the border, Netscape 3.x, and frame spacing, Internet Explorer 3.x, attributes. Unfortunately, all these attributes are not yet standard across the other browsers. It is possible to write the tags so that the various browsers will interpret them the way you intended, usually. Therefore, you will want to have a good idea of which browser your audience is using in order to create the most effective pages. By default, frames appear with a scroll bar if the browser detects more to the document than what would fit into the visible frame. With the great variety of choices in monitors and screen resolution, the browsers may permit scrolling when it is necessary. Also, scroll bars may interfere with the look of your page. You may remove the scroll bars with the scrolling attribute. You can set scrolling equal to no to turn off the scroll bars. Also, by default, users may click and drag the frame borders to resize the frames. This can be quite handy, but there may be situations where you would like to lock the size of your frames. For instance, you may put navigation icons in a frame at the bottom of the window. There would be no need to increase the size of this frame. You can add the no resize attribute to the frame tag to control the frame size. Note that if you set the frame border equal to no or the border equal to 0, you will have effectively locked the frame size as there will be nothing to drag. Because each frame is effectively a separate browser, clicking a link in one of the frames will go to a new page in that frame. It is also possible to create a link that when clicked makes a new page show up in another frame. To do this, you need to name the frames. If you want to be able to click a link in the top frame and have a new page come up in the bottom frame, place the following in the document row1.html. The target attribute causes the link to be opened in the bottom frame. If you want to be able to click a link and have a new page fill the window, replacing the frame set, use target equal to _top. And if you want the page to come up in an entirely new browser window, use target equal to _blank. This works even on pages that do not have frames. You may wish to use a small frame as a menu bar or navigational aid. Clicking on an object in the smaller frame would then open a document in the larger main frame. Since frame set pages usually contain no content, just a set of frame set and frame tags, they tend to not show up at all in browsers that do not support frames. The Frames standard provides an easy way to provide content for non-frame browsers. The highlighted content below will appear in browsers that do not support frames. Browsers that support frames will ignore everything between no frames and /no frames. Browsers that do not support frames will ignore the frames and display everything between the no frames tags. You may be able to replicate your page design with tables, thereby accommodating almost all the browsers still in use. Here is an example of the HTML document as it might appear to accommodate non-frame browsers. Of course, you may still want to have a plain page option without frames or tables, especially for crucial content.